Welcome back to Sham Rockin. I'm John Casey, and today we're here to talk about something that's on pretty much everybody's mind right now, and that's AI and the technology that comes with it, or just technology in general. There's a lot of buzz about technology being the answer to everything, but anyone who's spent some time in plant knows it's never that simple. And I've actually got somebody today here with us, Bryan Lawson, with us. Bryan is currently a vice president at a packaging company. I've known Bryan for about 27 years. Bryan, I think that means that we met, I think, when we were 14 and 15, something like that. Uh,
Exactly.
he rose through the ranks to lead one of P&G's largest and most technologically complex plants, a startup plant in West Virginia. He's certainly one of the brightest people that I know when it comes to continuous improvement. He's worked at a couple other very large companies, heading up their continuous improvement efforts in manufacturing plants. In fact, I remembered when we hosted some roundtables during the pandemic, Bryan had some of the better, more practical ideas that people literally went and used, I think, the following week in their sites. Welcome, Bryan. Hopefully, you're having a great day today already.
So far, so good.
You recently shared some hands-on experiences of technology that I want to get into in a minute here, with specifically with AI, in some really practical areas, safety and training. And after hearing some of these stories, it stuck with me, and it's something we're going to make a regular part for our viewers, which is to have people share different ideas that other people can use at their companies or in their industries. And then after that, I wanted to talk a little bit more about something that's probably a little more larger, at least. It's not more complex in nature, and that is twinning. And yeah, so we'll get into that, afterwards, and we'll even talk about what twinning is. Earlier, you'd mentioned some real world applications around safety observations and how you implemented them with basic, simple technologies. So, if you don't mind, just briefly walk me through what you did with that.
Sure. So, I mean, it really goes a lot to the coaching you give, right? What we started with was the SOS, the safety observation system, right? And so, as you coach folks, in a plant or manufacturing environment, right? The value of a safety observation is going and having the conversation with folks on the floor, right? Giving them feedback for being safe or unsafe, and helping them, if there's unsafe conditions, if there's unsafe behaviors, correct those. Well,
Absolutely.
obviously, especially in larger plants, you need to look for trends, right? There's a lot of data that can be gathered and used to help improve safety from those SOS cards. So, a lot of plants, though, spend a lot of administrative time trying to organize that data to capture it all and figure out how to turn that into an action plan.
Because how many would
Uh,
you end up with at a plant with, say, 300 people or so? You'd end up with a couple thousand, right? Or I'm trying to even think.
Easily, yeah, you could easily have at least 1,000, right? Even if you ask everybody to only do one a month, right? You're going to be in that 300 range, right? And that's
Right.
what most people do, since most SOS cards are handwritten, is they're going around and having to go through the cards one at a time, put check boxes into Excel or some kind of process like that, right? Um, and so what we were able to do was actually leverage Microsoft Copilot to
Hmm.
read through all of those, right? So we just took a digital scanner, scanned them all to a Teams folder, and then asked Copilot to analyze them. So Copilot was able to read even the handwritten stuff, which is fantastic, right? So, the Copilot was able to go through, read through the 1,000 different SOS cards, develop the trends, list them out, and then actually create an action plan for us. The way I prompted the system was telling the AI act like it was the site HS&E leader, right? Health, safety, and environmental leader. Tell it, here's where the SOS observations are, and then asking it for those trends and asking it to develop an actual action plan.
Huh.
It did a fantastic job. Um, we had tested it with both the paid license version as well as the free version. So even the free version of Microsoft Copilot was able to read the handwritten notes and develop very detailed action plans to provide the plant leadership team to go implement to help them drive the improvements in safety.
And so and the part that, by the way, I just, before I move forward, I guess that just blows my mind that it read the handwritten piece. I could see the typed piece being, something that was already programmed for. And then you were able to kind of see a benefit a month down the road or 2 months down the road with something like that.
Yeah, because I mean, again, the biggest advantage was it was taking out that manual work of going and looking for the trends myself or whoever was doing the work. It also made the action plan a little more robust, right? And so
Yeah.
site was able to take that and then go off and, one of the trends was, for example, lack of folks wearing a seatbelt on their fork trucks,
Hmm.
right? And so they were
I
able
see
to
that.
then develop specific training, action plans, and really make sure folks understood why it was so important to wear their seatbelt on the fork truck and really drive the behavior change to lead to safer outcomes.
Wow. Well, you're combining some Shamrock to the power of the Y with technology, and I think that's awesome. I really do. I think that's pretty amazing. That's cool, and it's again simple. It's free, is it more or less? And you know what I think it gets out of, Brian, is that endless. Let's have a meeting about this, and it just gives you a go do. Right out of the gate. That's what I think is something that I see as a benefit to AI and or any technology, is that just a, hey, here it is, it's written down in front of you, right? I mean, it's not like you have to go think about it.
Correct. And some of the coaching I gave the site was even the site was doing well in terms of they had a monthly safety committee meeting, right? And so they would have the operators and various folks from around the plant join in that safety committee meeting, right? And so my coaching was, hey, actually have the AI go through and read the SOS cards, do the data analysis, develop the action plan in that safety steering committee meeting, right? That way you can talk about it real time with folks that are on the committee, make sure they agree with the recommendations of the AI, but you're also helping build their skills. They're seeing how you're prompting the AI and how to get good responses and really fact check the AI to make sure that it's giving the correct answers, right? And so that's what they started doing, is just doing that real time in the meeting because it's so quick, right?
Yeah,
It took less than 3 minutes for the AI to read through 1,000 SOS cards, analyze the data, and develop an action plan, right?
perfect. I mean, it's a great application. Yeah. So, and you mentioned something similar with something that I think is big today, which is kind of the reinvigoration of 5Y, right? So I think that folks are looking for better problem solving skills, which certainly we, you know, work to help companies with. And just even 5Y, it's just, rather than people going, well, why is it continually broken? People going, oh, I don't know, the retraining in 5Y, you used it in that application as well?
Correct. Yeah, we took um, our 5Y training as well as some other basic YY analysis training and just simple fishboning, right? And we trained essentially an AI agent on it, right? And so we created an agent, which you can also do in Copilot or many of the other AI services that are out there. But we trained an agent to be a root cause analysis agent, right? And so we trained it on those tools um, and really put it out there for folks on the floor to leverage, right? So they would interface with it through iPads that we had available. And they could then essentially say, hey, I need to do a YY or 5Y on this problem. They could describe the problem, and then the AI would help walk them through step by step of getting to the root cause using 5Y. And then it would even help make recommendations as to the countermeasure. And so we had trained it on the countermeasure ladder essentially. And so it would always essentially help push the countermeasure up the ladder and say, you know, okay, the countermeasure was, retrain the organization. Well, that's pretty low on the countermeasure ladder, right? How do we make it more systemic? How do we put a system in place to make sure that while training is good, people are always doing the right thing, or there's a system there, whether it's maintenance or CILs, to make sure the root cause does not come back.
Okay. So, and you mentioned the training ladder, and I'm not sure everyone would know what that is, but I guess they could look it up with Google these days.
Yeah,
Um,
the countermeasure ladder is just a simple way to really think about how systemic your countermeasure is, right? So again, if all I'm doing is retraining somebody, that's not always the most effective solution, right?
right.
If I can put a system in place, a PM system, a CIL system, right, that helps make my countermeasure more robust. If I can automate it, right, that makes it even more robust, right? And so the AI was trained to help folks advance their countermeasures up that ladder and help
Mhm.
make sure that we truly prevented a reoccurrence.
Okay. Great. Yeah. I mean, and it really ties into, which is part of the reason, and it's funny because I think people who know me well, including you, probably going, wait a minute, technology, John, those two usually are way worse than oil and water. We're guiding them in the right direction. And they say, okay, well, I don't know how to do a 5 why. And then we can use an application like what you're referring to. And then really just, it makes my job even simpler in that, just kind of be a bumper to folks around, maybe ask them a simple question or two and keep them on pace. And it also then they can really AI, some of what we even do so that they can bring it back up in the future and know when to bring it back up in the future. So, we'll talk more about that with companies as we engage, but yeah, it's interesting stuff. You and I also had some conversations around twinning, and I know you're not talking about anything DNA wise here, but for people not familiar with that, what is twinning and how have you used that? What technology is involved? And just if you don't mind kind of briefly walking me through that.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I helped lead our pilot for developing a digital twin of one of our facilities, right? And while there's several different definitions of what digital twinning can mean, what we did in this specific application was we took the information from the PLCs, the programmable logic controllers of the equipment, as well as any sensors on that equipment. We brought that information along with the information from our shop floor quality system as well as our ERP system. We brought it all together real time for the operators on the floor to use, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we partnered with a company called Sight Machines, SIGHT Machines. They're a Microsoft partner, but they actually are the digital twin company that we leveraged. So we pulled that data into their manufacturing data platform, which helps visualize it. So again, giving real-time information to the operators on the floor so they know if they're winning or losing. And then starting to build in alerting, prompting, and the AI component, right? So
Mhm.
again, being able to alert an operator when it was time to do a quality check, for instance, or alert an operator to say, for example, hey, you've just had 3 stops in the last 5 minutes on this piece of equipment. You need to take an action, right?
And how
Um,
complex is that? Like, where does that information come out at? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was just that's really interesting.
I mean, it wasn't overly complex to implement. It's certainly, we had a lot of older equipment, right? And so we had to go kind of on a machine by machine basis of, okay, what data, what telemetry and sensors does the equipment have today? Is there any additional capability we want to add? And so in some cases, we did add some sensors. In other cases, it had all the telemetry we really needed. But bringing that in, and then it's just a matter of how do you want to visualize it? If you think about the standard work that you coach, in the site, knowing, for example, through an hour by hour board, are you winning or losing, right? If I
Mhm.
have to make 10,000 units, in the hour. How did I do? Did I make 10,000 units, right? How was the quality of those units?
Hmm. So
It's
it's
creating,
like an MES then as well at the same time, kind of a different.
it can function very similar to an MES, right?
Yeah.
Which is why, to me, I think the technology is so powerful, right? You kind of mentioned, alluded to my experience at Procter and Gamble, right? And what I saw over the decades was them really, spending across their enterprise billions of dollars creating MES systems. And they all worked extremely well. But nowadays, the technology is much cheaper, much more affordable. And so, in the specific example I did for $300,000, we were able to create the digital twin and essentially duplicate the MES systems of some of those bigger CPGs.
Huh. Okay. So this isn't because somebody, I remember when you first brought it up, I don't know, like within the last year, and I mentioned it to somebody else I knew, and they had worked, I think, at Unilever, PepsiCo, or wherever, and they said, "Oh, we did digital twinning 20 years ago." How is this different? And if, the company you were with, I think before it wasn't one of the behemoths, right? Is this something that's affordable to? Where does the cost come in and ROI on something like this? What's it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the cost is relative, right? And so, there's the subscription cost, right? The software as a service cost, right? That you would pay for most any digital twin kind of platform you might choose to use. There's the cost to host the data, whether that's in Azure or AWS or wherever you would host it. And then there's obviously the cost of adding sensors and hooking up the equipment as necessary. But in the grand scheme of things, those costs have come down significantly over the last several years. I mean, even honestly, about 5 years ago, when I first looked into creating a digital twin when I was at McCormick, it would, cost you nearly $1 million and take a
Hmm.
year to create a twin of a facility.
And that would be
Now,
cost prohibitive to some smaller companies. Yeah, exactly. So, but what is it now? It's more.
now it's fractions of that. It's down into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, like less than 500 for a decent sized plant. You can do it, and you can do it quickly, right? We were able to stand up the digital twin in about 4 months.
Hmm.
So the cost and the timing have dropped significantly.
The other tools that you were talking about earlier that you mentioned, I think Copilot, right? So those are even more accessible. And it's really kind of figuring out what fits, your budget and I guess, what you can afford to invest into your business to make it better. And, what the output of that is. So, we work with companies and it's interesting to me. I think I just want to point this out because, we talk about like, why do TPM? I ask people that all the time. And then I'm talking about owners of companies, and they're like, well, they're not really sure why they wanted to do TPM in the first place. And it's the same thing I think with technology, right? What you're saying is you're going to get your ROI on this pretty quickly if that's what you want to do for your business.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a really clear business case, right? You have to have clarity on what is the problem I'm trying to solve.
Exactly.
Um, but when we did the digital twin, the ROI was essentially 9 months, right? So in less than a year, we were able to get the payback of the digital twin, um, and then start having discussions about expanding it to the broader network.
Yeah, and I was, if you don't mind me adding here briefly, before we wrap up, is, I was down at Modex, which is a material handling show that they alternate between Atlanta and Chicago every year. Really, it's turned into more of a robot show, robots and technology and AI. And even what you're describing has more flexibility because they said, your basic robots, so your, robotic AGVs, right? So even robotic forklifts and things of that nature don't have a lot of flexibility to them. And that's been a issue for them, I guess, for 20, 25 years. Yeah, it's just really interesting. And I think something else that came up that I at least want to address, and if you have any thoughts on either one of these, let me know. But security. and just that a lot of these are made in China and have Chinese software and have Chinese cloud and yeah, I guess you call them safety concerns for the various companies. So I think that's something that also needs to be addressed more so than what you're describing, right? Because I know the company that you mentioned, Site
Type machine.
Site Machine, is a U.S. company, right? Also, just talking more about using Copilot versus using other more risky AI technology.
Yeah, I mean, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. I mean, I've traditionally worked for larger companies, right? And they are generally very, you know, nervous when it comes to security, right? And so that's why Copilot has generally been the choice, right? Because that
Right.
way it is contained in your tenant of Microsoft, of Azure and everything. It is contained within your company's firewall and has some of the extra protections that Microsoft provides. Most companies, their AI policy prohibits employees from using
Hmm.
other AIs, right? Obviously, you don't want somebody coming into work and maybe they've got a personal account for Gemini or ChatGPT or something like that, and uploading sensitive company documents to it, right? That starts to then put that information out there into the world, and so
Right.
you really do have to train employees and have a clear policy and provide people the tools that are safe to use.
Ah, great point. Really good point. Actually, that I guess would cover that. And that's something, again, it's just a simple step and folks need to do it, right? So, well, Brian, I really appreciate you taking the time today to share how you've been using AI and some of the practical applications that it has in the world. I would thank everyone else for listening to us today and hanging out with us. And I really want to start more of a trend that if this sparked any ideas or questions, please, please, please drop them in the comments. And that way we'll see if we can help people by responding to the comments, or I might even ask you another question in the future, Brian, if somebody comes up with a question, if you don't mind.
Sounds good.
And yeah, and just please let us know ideas even for future episodes. So feel free to subscribe so that you don't miss anything that's coming up. And thank you again for watching, and we'll see you with the next one.